Hi, welcome to the Online Jewelry Academy. I'm Professor John R. and I'm your instructor. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to make this project, a beautiful pendant that's accented with colors made from epoxy resin material. Now, in a previous video, I've explained all the different aspects of the epoxy resin in detail, so in this video, I'm just going to get right to it. For this project, we are going to be using some colored chalk or chalk pastel material in order to give us the colors. These cost you about 99 cents. This one's going to be a little bit more, but you get a little bit more variety of color in this packet. Now you can see I've laid out a palette here that I'm going to use for the project. I've got a combination of primarily warm colors, and I've also mixed in a little bit of cool and neutral into the palette in order to make it more balanced. The other items that I'm going to need to make this project include some jump rings, a pendant frame or armature, some toothpicks. These are going to be used for blending the color material and applying it. I also have some tweezers for picking up small pieces, a Exacto blade to trim any weird things that might be dangling from someplace. I also have a variety of pliers and cutters for manipulating the metal aspects of the project, paper for mixing the material, and here's the epoxy resin itself. Clear epoxy resin. Don't buy the one that has a color. Now this is a 5-minute epoxy, and it's just a 2-part resin material. I also have some artist tape in case I want to mask areas off or create a handle for holding the project. And lastly, I have some nail lacquer. Now this clear nail lacquer is great because if you accidentally touch something before it's dry, or if you don't thoroughly mix the epoxy resin, a clear coat of this, or thin coat of it, can actually save a project. We're ready to get started, but before we begin, I just want to mention that you need to work under ventilation with this particular material. It does give off fumes. So either work near an open window or with some type of ventilation system in your area. You also can never be too careful, so put on some eye protection just in case you get anything near your face. Alright, let's start. Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to take my armature and I want to apply a composition of jump rings into the armature. Now I can pick up my tweezers and I can just arrange them into a pleasing arrangement. So let's see what I can do here. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So once you've figured out your arrangement, take it out of your armature and set it to the side in the same order that it's going to go back into the frame. Then you're ready to mix some epoxy resin to glue those elements down. Now, this is a 2-part material. It's a resin and a hardener that works with a 1-to-1 ratio. So we're going to squeeze out equal amounts of this material. And for the time being, I'm just going to work with it in its clear form. And you can see it's very clear. Unlike older examples of this material that might have been a little bit yellow, this one is extremely clear. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to take a toothpick and I'm just going to sweep through both sides of this material and give it a good stir. You want to mix it thoroughly because if you don't, it will never cure and dry. Okay, so now that I've got this material thoroughly mixed, I'm just going to pick some up on my toothpick just by rolling it around, and then I'm just going to drop it into this armature, and I'll use the toothpick to slide it around and coat the back. Now, I could be putting a colored resin in here if I want to speed up and apply a background color, but if you're using the resin in a transparent way where you want the color to be accented by the reflection of the background, you want to start with the clear resin first. Okay, so I've applied the glue. Now I'm ready to just use my tweezers to pick up these jump rings and apply them to the surface of the glue in the exact same order that I had arranged them in when I started. Okay, I'm going to leave that there to let it set for a few minutes, and when I come back I'll show you how to apply the background color. I let that set or cure for a few minutes. Now I'm ready to put the black background in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a black chalk pastel and I'm just going to scrape the pastel against my paper surface. Now what I can do is just take the epoxy resin, the resin and the hardener, and put drops of both onto my paper. Now the cool thing about this material is that until I mix them together, nothing happens. But you don't want to wait too long because it will seep into your paper surface a little bit. Okay, so I have approximately equal amounts of both the resin and the hardener. I can start to mix these two together and then pick up some of the black material from the chalk pastel in order to color this resin. Okay, so this is where the toothpick comes in really handy. I'm just going to pick it up and roll it through the surface. Now I'll take my pendant and I'm just going to carefully drip some of the black material into the background. Now the tip of the toothpick is great because you can use it to help guide the material in between each of these little jump rings. Now, like I said, you could skip this step if you're not going to use any of the resin in its transparent form. You could go right to the black. But if you want to be able to have like a lighter pink color that's transparent, you need to have the previous step included. Okay, rather than fill this all in, I'm just going to jump to one that I made earlier. And you can see that I've got, in this case, a variety of copper and silver jump rings just to give it a little bit more flavor. All right, let me set this aside. And let's bring this one out. And I'm going to begin to apply my palette to it. Now, the easiest way to do this is to take each of the chalk pastels and just scrub them onto the paper in just a small amount, and you're just creating little piles of this chalk material. You'll see how fast this goes. This is a great project that you can do on a cold day because the material actually it stays workable longer when it's cold. So it's a good excuse to run the air conditioning if you're doing this in the summertime. Okay, so I've scraped a little bit of each of the colors from my palette that I want to use onto the paper. Now what I like to do is I kind of like to neaten it up a little bit with my Exacto blade, make little neater piles. Plus that gives me more surface area to work with on the paper. Okay, now remember what I told you earlier about how this material is great, nothing happens until you work with it? This is where you can use it to your advantage. So what you do is just put a dot of near each of them of both the resin and the hardener. All you need to be aware of is that you make dots of the same size next to the color that you're working with. Okay, so that's the hardener. And now I'm going to match the scale of the dots with the resin. Okay, so that looks pretty good. You just go through and you eyeball it. Remember, nothing's going to happen until I mix them up. Okay. Now I'm ready to rock and roll with this. So the hardest part is just deciding where you want to put the colors. So I think I want to put the cool colors into areas that are a little bit unexpected. So maybe this center should be white. So I'll mix together the resin and the hardener and I'll drag in the white. Remember to mix everything thoroughly, otherwise it doesn't cure properly. Okay, so I'll roll some up onto the toothpick, and then I'm just going to guide it in by letting gravity take it from me and drop it into this little cup. Now what this looks like is cloisonne, where they use wires to contain the enamel material. Okay, so here let's do a little bit of the yellow. And you can see that when you mix the colors into the epoxy resin, they get wet and they get a little bit darker than you may expect. And the smaller the amount of resin that you mix in, the more transparent the resin material stays. Okay, so I want to fill this large one near the top with yellow. So I'm going to use gravity as my friend and drop it in. And you can use the tip of the toothpick to help guide the material around the inside form of the jump ring. Now you notice I kind of overfilled the white one and made it look more like a jewel. I could actually do that with the yellow too if I want to, just add a little bit more. And you can always go back later and add another layer if you want to. Okay, let's get this blue in now. Now it's important to pick a good palette, and if you have trouble picking a palette on your own, what you might want to do is thumb through an art book, and if you see a painting that you really enjoy, just jot down what the colors are that were used in the painting. And you can then go back to your colors or your palette. Oops, I made a little bit of a glop right there. I'll just smooth that off. Anyway, you can go back and you could just look at the colors in the painting and then select colors for your palette from your pastel kit that match the colors in the painting. And then that way you're probably going to end up with a project that looks really, really good. But some of you I know are really good with color anyway. Okay, a little bit of the orange. Now orange is my favorite color, so I want to feature it. So I'm going to add it here. And then I'm going to go back and pick up a little bit more, and I'm going to maybe drop some in on this side as well. So there we go. 2 colors left. 2 shades of pink. Now maybe I'll use the lighter pink up near the top and the darker one near the bottom. Remember, just glob it onto the toothpick, let gravity drop it in, and snag it away. And you can see how fast it goes if you have everything already laid out and ready to go. Last one. I'll pick up this darker hot pink and I'll drop it into the bottom. Remember, let gravity just pull it off the toothpick. And there we go. So now I just need to let this set up. It'll take about 5 minutes. Now it takes maybe a day or two, depending on how much you used, for it to fully cure. So hands off, put it somewhere and leave it alone. Now what I want to show you before we go is you can go through the videos on the Online Jewelry Academy website or YouTube channel, and you could reference some of the metal projects that I've demonstrated in previous videos and use this technique to highlight your metal work. Now here is the bracelet from the Forged Link bracelet project, and it's been colorized, so 2 different videos, and I've used this same form to make this really cute pendant. Here's a shell form from the shell forming video, and I've used this technique to create this beautiful seed pod pendant. And over here I have a fibula from the fibula video. So this is a brooch, but I used the same techniques of bending and hammering to create this interesting pendant that has dimension to it. Check out all of our videos and products on the onlinejewelryacademy.com. Thanks for watching.